the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, the big and furry bovine. Joining me on the panel, Brian, Jake, and Rick. Say hello, Rick.
Hello, Rick.
And Jake.
Hey, Moo.
And, of course, the ever-loving Brian. And, of course, there's a little delay. We're having some audio issues. Hey, Kawaki, are you hearing me clearly? You know, there's a problem with StreamYard on this end of things, so everything sounds really distorted to me. So I apologize if I ask people to repeat themselves. It's not that I've lost it, although I probably did a long time ago. All right. Good. As long as it's clear to the viewers, I'll struggle through and make out what my co-hosts are saying. All right. And welcome back, Brian.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
And Jeff, nice to see you in the chat room. And and nice to see you, and Kawaki, and anyone else joining in. Thanks for tuning in to Moohead Radio. Today I'm going back on something that I said in the last program, and this is a rarity when I do a 180, and everybody knows where I stand about the dangers of football. Everybody knows how I feel about Freddie Kitchens. Everybody knows how I feel about Jimmy Haslam. And something that I said dating back a week ago is that I really don't feel like I'm a Browns fan anymore. And I want to go back on that. I want to go 180 on it and say that I am singularly the biggest Browns booster in the world. Now, you're probably wondering, why is he calling himself Paul Newman on the air? If you haven't noticed, I mean, that's not usually the usual Mr. Moohead. Paul Newman, if you've ever seen the movie Cool Hand Luke, then you know basically the quintessential Paul Newman character.
Oh, God, he's going to do the egg contest.
Right. Paul Newman plays a guy who is an anti-authority person. He gets into basically the chain gang for destroying parking meters just to piss off the leaders of the town, the little town that he was in. And he ends up on the chain gang, and he discovers that the forces there are greater and worse than the ones that made him commit the crime in the first place. And he winds up with the goal in life of beating the man. This is a theme that would follow throughout the 1960s and would follow Paul Newman in his career all the way up to The Verdict, one of his later movies in which he has to go up against a Catholic diocese that's doing the wrong thing, a church, priests, and attorneys. I am at the point now where I'm just wanting to beat the man. Because the last time I spoke to you, all the punishment hadn't been meted out by the NFL, although you knew quite clearly how I felt about Roger Goodell and how I felt about the NFL brass. But now it's galvanizing. There comes a point where we say, the Browns are just beating themselves. But you know something? Browns have won a couple games in a row. And the Browns just dismembered Pittsburgh. And the results of what the NFL has done is to reward Marquise Pouncey for committing a dangerous assault, for over-punishing a guy who swung a helmet and doing nothing to the white quarterback who started it all. And you realize that the Rooney family, the Kraft family, Roger Goodell, and all of it, they're the man. They're evil. They're the man. They're allowed to cheat. They're allowed to bend the rules. They're allowed to spy on teams. They change rules in the middle of games, whether it's snow plows or butt fumbles. And they favor certain organizations. And the Cleveland Browns not only are not one of those organizations, the Browns have become a laughingstock, quite frankly, because they have shot themselves in the foot since they came back in the league in 1999. They came back as not the Cleveland Browns, but some horrible expansion team. So we've watched a slew of bad players, bad coaches, bad strategists, bad quarterbacks, bad draft picks. But when we finally get to a point where we have talent on the field, the media wants to say that it's the whipping boy, Freddie Kitchens, and you know that I don't think Freddie Kitchens should be a head coach. But when we look further, the NFL is doing everything they can do to make the Cleveland Browns fail. Everything they can. For as many years as we took the brunt of every late hit, of every quarterback they carried off the field, where we had to play our second and third string quarterbacks and didn't have a fucking chance to win, because our primary guy, who wasn't that good to begin with, took cheap headshots from the Steelers and Ravens consistently year after year, and the Bengals with perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, every year it was the same shit, and we were at the bottom of the pile. And here we are again, at the bottom of the pile. So I want to say something that is going to shape the way that this show works. I don't really want to lecture about Freddie Kitchens and his lack of motivational skills, discipline. I don't want to talk about whether Baker Mayfield is worse this year, better this year, or whether the offensive scheme is better or worse, whether the offensive coordinator should be calling the plays or whether Kitchens should be calling the plays, whether Higgins should be playing or Higgins shouldn't be playing, whether David Njoku is still on IR because he went on Instagram or whether he's still on IR because he's hurt. I don't want to go... I added that last one in just to get it in there because it does fit the pattern, doesn't it? Here's what I want to say. It's beat the man. It's whip the llama's ass. It's taken Goodell and his rich white boys to the woodshed and hiding them. That's what it's all about. It's galvanizing this team of miscreants and turning them into Paul Newman. Every game will be a battle not against the Dolphins this week, but against the NFL. And every game that the Cleveland Browns win sticks it in the face of the man. And for that reason alone, they deserve your respect, fans. Because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of having sand kicked in my face. I want to see our guys go out there and rip the Miami Dolphins to shreds. Do I have anything against the Dolphins? No. Do I want anyone to get hurt? No.
Bring back the Hanson brothers.
Right. I don't want, no high sticking. I don't want to see helmet to helmet shit. I don't want to see that. What I want to see is just the Browns to win. And then I want the Browns to go back into Pittsburgh and hand it to the man there and shove it up their ass. You know what the truth was? The truth that got hidden by all this other stuff is that when really put in an important game under pressure at great speed, Mason Rudolph failed. And this is what's been lost in the shuffle. This was the guy who, remember, oh, he keeps you in games, he doesn't make mistakes. Can you count that high, folks? Count my fingers. That would be 5. That would be 1 less. That's how many interceptions that white boy threw. 4. And he didn't know where in the hell he was throwing them. Because he was throwing...
Yeah. Fumble.
Honestly, he threw the ball right to Schobert. I don't even know how he couldn't see him. I started singing Stevie Wonder songs because I was like, the guy's blind. He can't see what's in front of him. Thank you.
He did his best for Sean Kaiser impersonation.
Or we could do Ray Charles. Hey! No, we're not gonna.
I mean, last week, if I were the Steelers, I would have rather had a concussed Colt McCoy against Cincinnati that year when he was like blackout second half of the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what this is? Can you imagine if they allowed Ben Roethlisberger to be hit like this week after week and he ended up brain damaged, and the Steelers 10 years ago would have to play their second and third string quarterback for half the season like we have every single year?
Well,
they wouldn't win.
The closest thing is the year after Carolina went to the Super Bowl, they let Cam Newton take these kinds of hits.
Yeah. And, David Carr took these kind of hits. There's lots of young quarterbacks who, and we'll never know whether these quarterbacks or would ever have become anything or not. Tim Couch took a beating. And, I'm not going to tell you that Tim Couch was the real deal, but we'll never know if he could have at least had some kind of a career. He was ruined psychologically playing behind that offensive line. And with those slow receivers, it was death. And then, Chris Palmer.
And his arm got blown out.
I would rather have had Carson Palmer than Chris Palmer. Hell, I would rather listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
I'd rather have Arnold Palmer.
That's right. Or at least to drink one or two. So this is what it's about. The Browns need to stick it to the man. And every game will be analyzed in that way. And every game that the Browns win, I'm going to stick up Roger Goodell's ass because he's a thief. He's a dishonest person. And the more this continues, the worse it gets. Listen to this. Thrash could rule on additional Garrett punishment. When appeals officer James Thrash upheld all portions of his suspension on Thursday, one key aspect of the indefinite ban was the meeting with the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell prior to reinstatement. The league will use that meeting to determine how long, if at all, Garrett's suspension will affect the Cleveland Browns' 2020 campaign. NFL Network insider Ian on the payroll Rappaport added Friday that if after the meeting with the commissioner's office there is additional discipline that Garrett contests, Thrash reserves the right to rule on that additional discipline. So, to make it clear, if there is additional discipline and Garrett says, I'm going to appeal it, down on your knees, nigga! You don't believe me? You don't believe me? Don't you want to fuck the league more than you want to fuck Jessica Alba? Don't you want to fuck the league? I do. I would love...
Jessica Alba, what is she, 50? Come on.
That's what I hope for.
Yeah. What's the downside of this, Brian?
You know something, Brian? That's hotter than what you've been hitting lately.
That's true.
Okay. Now, if you're younger, I don't know. Maybe you want to get lost in Kris Kardashian's ass. No, I don't want to go there.
Oh, God.
No. Hell, find my keys, we could back out of here. No.
Boy, that Karen Carpenter, she's a real cutie.
Karen Carpenter. She's hungry for your love. Oh my God! Wait a minute! It's impression time.
Catherine Bach. God, she had a body.
How about this? What is this?
Now she looks like a walrus.
Oh my.
That's a grain of rice caught in Karen Carpenter's throat.
O'Donnell, Mario. Rosie O'Donnell.
No, I wouldn't hit that. I wouldn't hit that with a baseball bat.
No, that was a comment in the.
I know. So basically what it's saying is it's not enough punishment because we can hold this over the whole Browns organization. Well, hell, let's just start winning, guys. Let's go out there and let this galvanize us and just stick it to the man. And, instead of sticking it to the man by wearing colored cleats or shaded shields over your face mask or, expensive watches or win. That's it. Because if you want to piss off Goodell more than anything, just win. That is what will kill Goodell, will kill the league, and will kill the man. Just win.
Yep. Houston did the same thing. Houston is a newer team than Cleveland, and they turned it around in 10 years when they got Matt Schaub from the Falcons in 2008.
And, I guess for me, it's all about watching what's behind us. And it's like, yeah, the Texans and the Colts and those two teams were really indistinguishable from one another, to be honest with you, and we're better than they are. If we really did have a coach, honest to God, I mean, we would make the playoffs as a wild card team. These teams that are vying for the wild card are not all that good. There's things missing in them, and I think we have as much or more than they do. So that's what it's about this week. And so I wanted to throw in Thrash's name, so that then there's this, of course, this great headline. If you're not with me on this, you will be in a few. The NFL had no recorded sound from the field in determining that there was no evidence that Mason Rudolph hurled a racial slur at Myles Garrett. That's because privately Roger Goodell, and I hate to say this, the Rooney family drops N-bombs all the time. Don't want to believe me? I can tell you for a fact that it's true with the Rooney family. Oh yes, I'm going to divulge something I've never divulged before. You're going to love this. Because it's going to take down two pricks at one time. The beloved Art Rooney, he of the deceased, horrible stench that still settles over the Monongahela. And Art Modell, who I still am looking for his grave so I can urinate on it.
Is that Limburger? No, that's just Art.
A very close relative of mine was the head of the Democratic Party in Stark County of Ohio, in Canton, Ohio, and regularly attended all kinds of political functions in both parties. And of course, the Republican side at the time, the people who showed up, because my father was very tight with Howard Metzenbaum, who was at the time the senator from Ohio, right? One of the tribe. You got that right. I don't mean the Cleveland Indians either. I mean my tribe, motherfucker.
Boy.
Howard Metzenbaum was being fundraised for through the Democratic Party, and he needed Stark County. So going to these events with the Republican Party and watching Art Modell and Art Rooney palling it up, and the horrible racist things that came out of their mouths, it was disturbing. And I grew up hearing about this, and there was no reason to lie about it because these were two men who owned big franchises in the NFL. The notion that there's no sound to, to prove that a racial epithet was uttered, all you have to do is look in Colin Kaepernick's direction, and there's 1,000,001 ways of saying, on your knees, nigger. There's tons of ways of doing it. We're not going to let you play. We're going to extend your punishment. And if you go to the Players Association to appeal it, we'll punish you more. There's a never-ending way of beating people down when you're the man. And the thing that makes you the man is that you have control, you have power. And any person who sees what's happened to Kaepernick, I mean, let's be honest about this, folks. Most of these players, if they did not have football, and I wish more of them would realize this by putting more into their game, okay? I'm not defending the effort level being put out by the players. But if they didn't have the game, what would they be doing for a living? You think that Odell Beckham Jr. would be a superstar in life if he didn't have football? I mean, do you think that these guys who came out of college programs would have graduated college and gotten great jobs coming out into the job market? Do you think that would enable them to have earned $1 million in their lifetime, let alone 5, 6, 7, 10 times that per year? When you have something over somebody and you hold it above them and threaten to take it away, most people will fall into line. And most players will. That's what the man does. The reason that Cool Hand Luke, poor Luke, he got whooped on and kept getting put in the box in the movie was because the man could do it. They wanted to break his spirit. The one thing you can't have is, as Lou Grant said, spunk. They don't like that. The man don't like that. Yeah, you don't sass the man.
And this goes back to college, too, because these players have a set schedule where they can't take certain classes or majors due to football schedules. They're limited to certain things. There was a quarterback for Northwestern who had to change his major to keep playing football from pre-med to psychiatric care because the football schedule was too grueling to be a pre-med major. So they're set up to be molded into football players.
I mean, here's another thing. This is what we call changing the narrative. This is something that the man is really good at because the man owns all kinds of things. The man, and I'm going to please Brian because to me, the man is not Donald Trump, all right, any more than the man was Barack Obama. It isn't. The man are people that you can't see who are controlling the contents of legislation that make unjust laws, unjust economic opportunities, inequality. And the man is the person who's paying all of Congress to slip this language into our legislation. We're legislated 50 years into the future, folks. And it's because the man made sure that verbiage got into every bill, even if it had nothing to do with the bill that was on the docket, and literally changed the way we do business.
Agenda 21, baby.
And I just don't, I know what the man does. Changing the narrative is easy if you put a guy into the White House and make it about black versus white or Chinese versus Caucasian or whatever we make it about, or Arabs against, America, whatever it is. You change the narrative, you get people looking the other way, and then you fuck them in the ass. That's what the man does. Here's a headline.
NDAA.
Stephen A. Smith says, it's time to hear from Mason Rudolph, not his lawyer. Oh, really?
I heard from Mason Rudolph. I could care less if he says anything else.
Stephen A. Smith came on the air to defend himself after I said what I said in the last show about him. He's a house servant, and that's what he is. He's nothing more than a slave who has a more comfortable place to lay his ass. He had to defend himself because a bunch of African-American athletes came after him and said that he was an Uncle Tom. They said that he was a traitor against his own people. One actually came on the air and said, the Kaepernick looks a lot blacker than you, Stephen. That was said live on the air on First Take. You should have seen the look on Max Kellerman and whoever the woman is who's the third one.
Yeah.
The look on their face was sheer terror.
Was that T.O. saying that Kellerman's blacker than Stephen A?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And Stephen A was like, "You've stepped over the boundary," like he's offended. But I mean, it was shocking. And it was like, well, somebody else gets it anyway. Stephen A. Smith's on the payroll. And it's really bad when the people who are paying your bills are the people who are oppressing your people. That's the thing that's disturbing. So now it's time to hear from Mason Rudolph and not his lawyer. Well, the fact of the matter is that we have a perfect opportunity to hear from Mason Rudolph because I'm sure he let go of a racial epithet. I'm sure he did. He was tired of getting hit. And what's true is true. He got rid of the ball. Garrett could have just kind of laid off him, and instead he did finish the play. There's no flag. It wasn't like it was a late hit. He just could have laid off him.
He claims it was erroneously.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
And they were saying a lot how there were other players around that would have heard it. The 3 people around, none of them were black. I'm just saying that much. The 2 linemen were white, and the other people were 7 yards from the play. So you don't know what was said. I'm not saying he said anything, but you can't say the other black players would have heard it. You can't even go there because there was nobody around that play except the 2 white linemen.
And it comes down to who you believe. And the fact is, you know who the league is predisposed to believe. Because he's the guy who didn't get suspended. So, again, it's the pot calling the kettle black. If you're going to sit there and say, oh, what Myles Garrett did was so dangerous, could have concussed the guy or worse, could have killed him. Kicking somebody in the head is worse. I don't know if people have ever played football who watch the show. You can just take a look at, what it's like to get. Well, I've talked to boxers, a lot of fighters through the years. And you know what fighters hated more than anything? Headgear. They said more concussions were caused by headgear when they were amateurs than anything else, because the way the headgear fit and the constant pounding, it was concussive. You kick somebody in the helmet may protect the skin, but the constant rattling, you want to find out how you get concussions. I mean, look at the whiplash victims from car accidents. It's not that they necessarily hit their head against the windshield. Some do. You can become thoroughly concussed just because your brain is shaking in your head. That's technically the definition of a concussion. It's when your brain shifts from, within its housing, causing damage. You kick somebody in the head repeatedly, they will get a concussion. It's dangerous as hell to do. But by lightening that guy's punishment, what you're basically saying is, we're a league that will not stand for our men committing abuse, domestic abuse, striking women, but we will support a guy who commits an assault defending one of his players. So as long as it's on the field and within the NFL sanction, it's okay.
Hey, can I bring up a helmet throwing incident? Remember when Kyle Turley ripped off a defensive player's helmet and whipped it like 10 yards? Mm-hmm. How many games did he get for that?
I don't think he got anything. I mean, it's really funny. When the Browns take off their own helmets, they get penalized. Okay? Dwayne Rudd can tell you all about that. I can go through all the things that the man has done to the Cleveland Browns organization.
Oh, somebody had that happen to him this season because he was arguing with the ref. He took his helmet and flipped the helmet up so he could yell at the ref. and got flagged.
Now, the last play of a game, after the gun had sounded, raising your hand victoriously, and then after the fact, calling a penalty that put them in field goal range that allowed them to beat us, hasn't happened to any other team in the history of professional football. Bottlegate? No, nobody's ever spiked a ball before and stopped the clock and ended up having a review that went on the play before. They never had a problem with communication from the booth like that with any other organization in the history of professional football since they implemented communication with the booth. I can tell you so many stories being a Browns fan over the course of years. It's like, did Carlos's field goal, was it really good?
How about Winslow's push-out call in the end zone, the Hail Mary? But it was still a rule. No one would ever say that wasn't a push-out, but went against the Browns that one time because it was the last play of the game.
One thing I can tell you, whenever a pass interference call will be overturned, it will go against the Cleveland Browns. That's what the man does. And it's meant to weaken the resolve of the team and weaken the resolve of the fans. Show up in force, man. Show up in force. You don't have to love Jimmy Haslam. You don't have to love Freddie Kitchens. You just got to stick it to the man. If you want to, go to the stadium and bring little pictures of Roger Goodell and hold them up in the stadium. If you're going to the game...
Do what Jim McMahon used to do. On your headbands, put Goodell.
Or a cheer. If you just hold up his picture, nobody can stop you from holding up his picture, but the chant, fuck the man. Fuck the man. Let the goddamn microphones pick it up on the telecast. We're all behind Myles Garrett, and I'm all behind whatever the team does now.
Yep.
Because whatever the hell it is, let's just lay waste to everything in front of us. Why the hell not?
And I obviously agree the suspension is maybe a little much, but it should be pretty heavy. But if Myles Garrett does not appreciate Cleveland fans for supporting him after his comments 2 weeks ago now, he better appreciate them next year when he comes back. Because Cleveland fans could have thrown him out to dry for him saying he doesn't care about the fans. And now they're supporting him.
He had 26,000 likes on Twitter.
Yep.
The one that I responded to, and over 1,000 comments. I think it was up to 1,200 comments.
Cleveland fans could have thrown him out to dry there, but they supported him despite his awful comments about the city. So he better be thankful.
I'll only say one thing about Freddie Kitchens' Friday comments after practice. They asked him if Stephen Carlson's touchdown catch against the Steelers shows what he's capable of doing moving forward. Here's what Freddie said. We have a lot of confidence in Stephen that he can do the job, that he can go in and do the job. He showed us that very early, that he is very precise and detailed in his preparation, and that when he actually gets to the field, you are going to get exactly what you tell him to do. You are going to get what you tell him to do. That is always a good thing. So if you want to wonder why David Njoku's not playing, it's because Stephen Carlson does what he's supposed to do, and that's not shoot your mouth off on Instagram prior to the team reinstating you after X number of weeks on the IR. This is what motivates our head coach, doing what he says. Another thing that I'll tell you is it gives credence that Todd Haley and Bob Wiley said that Freddie just took the credit and blew the other guys out of the water. He eliminated those people around him that could get in his way. Believe me, if Stephen Carlson was as good as David Njoku, then honestly, we wouldn't. We would have heard his name long ago. I think he has a brighter future because he went to Princeton. That's about what I can say about that. The Browns, of course, still have injuries out the wazoo in important positions. That means that Olivier Vernon is not playing again. And we are short on linemen. And so we have managed to elevate 2 guys from our practice squad. Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Here are their names: Brandon Bryant and Porter Gustin. From the law firm Brandon Bryant, Porter and Gustin. Pray to the baby Jesus they don't have to play. That's going to be how we're trying to cover for these injuries that are befalling the Browns. You know, here's some things you should know about the Dolphins. They started 0-7, they beat the Jets, and then they beat the Colts. The Colts are limited because Jacoby Brissett is not Andrew Luck, and I think people are starting to realize that he doesn't put points on the board. The Dolphins are 2-8. They're allowing 148 yards per game rushing. That's second worst in the NFL, and they're giving up 30 points a game, second worst.
They're also giving up a lot of receiving touchdowns to the backs.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really stopping anybody. Ryan Fitzpatrick is their quarterback, and he's 5-1 career against the Browns. And it's either good Fitzpatrick or bad Fitzpatrick. We know that. And the way you make him bad Fitzpatrick is don't let him sit in the pocket. He is strictly a comfort pocket passer. If you get him out running with the ball, he's slow and he doesn't throw nearly as well when he's on the move, and less accurately, where he throws a ton of interceptions when he's flushed out of the pocket. This is going to be the exact opposite thing. Instead of having to worry about Josh Allen and containment, you're trying to get pressure to collapse the pocket this week. It's going to be difficult with the fact that we don't have people that can do that job. Pray to the baby Jesus that Deverell Lawrence is able to use some moves to get into the backfield, because without 3 guys, it's going to be very, very difficult to put that kind of pressure on this quarterback. Fitzpatrick is 36 years of age. The fact that he is starting will tell you everything you want to know about Rosen, and will prove that I know nothing about drafting players.
Rosenstein!
Boy, that's been a bust. That's been a total bust. Yeah. So to me, it's not so much about the Dolphins. It's about showing the character to stick it up Goodell's ass. It's going out with the same anger and wrath that you had against the Steelers and to transfer it into playing the Dolphins. And to keep bringing that rage week after week after week. We've lost Morgan Burnett, of course, to an Achilles injury. That's going to hurt us, And the one thing that we can say about Ryan Fitzpatrick, he can throw the long ball. He does have the ability to put points on the board. The thing is, their defense gives up 30 a game. So, I mean, we should be able to run the ball, and with 2 backs that can hurt them, we should be just brawling and mauling them at the line of scrimmage. And we should be able to get receivers open in the secondary too. Although I'm not thinking that, it's really funny how, what is it, Ricky Seals Jones, is that his name? I've forgotten already. He gets off to this really good start, and then he got hurt, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what happened to him? And I just wonder, what happened
he fell into the hole that's under the bench where Rashard Higgins and Nick Chubb used to be.
I honestly, I thought that he was going to be the guy who gave us athleticism because he was a former wide receiver converted into a tight end, and that he would be a matchup problem, and he seemed to be for linebackers. But all of a sudden now it's Stephen Carlson. Maybe Carlson blocks better. I really don't know. So, it seems like players are on the radar, off the radar very quickly for the Cleveland Browns. And guys who seem to get off to decent starts. I mean, Devereaux Lawrence, when he's played, I thought was really looked good, but he stopped playing. So now he has to play. And we'll see how he does. It's...
One thing about Devereaux Lawrence, though, he does have a high motor, very much like previous Browns that have been released and gone on to greener pastures with other teams.
Who was the guy we had from Penn State who went over to Tampa Bay? 6'7" guy, defensive end.
Oh.
Anybody in the chat room wanna let me know? I'm more than...
His last name starts with a K, I think.
And I don't even know how he's doing with Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay's
Nassib?
not doing so well.
Was it Nassib?
Yeah, Carl Nassib. Yes.
Okay, I don't know why I said K.
Yes. That's another guy with a high motor, and Devereaux Lawrence might have limited moves, but maybe because I haven't seen much film on him, maybe he can do some damage, Kawaki's, here you go. Yeah. The Bills put up 37 against him. And the Bills shouldn't score 37 points against, Sister Mary's School of the Deprived and Sexually Limited. I mean, there's no reason. 37 points. And good point, Jake. I mean, Brissett is missing, a healthy T.Y. Hilton, yeah. But they looked... the
Did
game,
go mute?
Huh? I didn't hear you.
All of a sudden, I lost your sound.
Oh, no, I'm not mute.
No,
Although a lot of people wish I were. Especially the man.
Oh, there we go. Got you back now.
Sounds like a Jackson 5 song. Oh, I Want You Back. I'm sorry. Yeah. But,
Baby, come back!
Yeah, I think that last night's game, I mean, it was exciting. If you like to see two mediocre teams grinding it out until the end with the outcome in doubt until the very end, that's your kind of football. But, there's such a big difference between the vast middle and then the teams that are the better football teams. There isn't a prayer in 20, man, that's going to get these mediocre teams far along into the playoffs. They'd have to cheat like the Astros. You wonder how that came about.
Oh, the Honorable Carlos Beltran, Man of the Year guy, is caught in a cheating scandal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... why the Houston Astros? Why? I mean, is there really any interest in that team? I think Jose Altuve is a great player. I think that, they got some really fine young players there. But, I mean, really? I mean, anybody believe that Justin Verlander suddenly found his 98-mile-an-hour fastball at an advanced age? Does anybody believe that they have conquered the art of mechanics to the point where every single pitcher suddenly has this vast improvement? I don't know.
Well, Bauer called it, right?
Yeah, Bauer called it.
Bauer said it's all going to be released soon. Trust us.
Yeah, but the thing with Bauer is if he screams fire in a crowded theater, nobody's going to believe him because he's a wackadoodle. But he was right about that. And he was right also about whatever it was. What is that, Rick, they call what is it, the spin, the revolution on the ball?
Yeah, revolution or whatever.
The spin rate, is it the spin rate or some such thing that... And it could only be accomplished by somebody really utilizing substances to get them there. I mean, there is a really shady side to this whole thing. And Major League Baseball will find a way to punish the Astros without admitting exactly how they've done this.
Oh yeah,
the
Astros had to have some like skin-colored stickum on there somewhere there that they were using.
Yeah. Jovan is asking the question. Jovan, doesn't that sound like a perfume or a cologne? Hello,
Jovan.
that is why I wear Jovan.
Rasolski.
I wear Jovan. It sounds like something Ricardo Montalban would plug. I use
With
Jovan
his Corinthian leather.
in my Cordoba.
Fine Corinthian leather.
Fine Corinthian leather. And in a fucking Cordoba. I mean, please. Please. I mean, it's like...
Before that, it was the LeBaron was his car.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. It's like, of all the cars, it's like, that is why I see quality in Chrysler. It's like, Chrysler? Get in a K car, for Christ's sake, and push them back. Push them back into Mexico in a goddamn, in the trunk of a K car. What the fuck is he, fine Corinthian leather. I mean, please. The leather in the seat lasted longer than the engine. Fuck. Come on. Jeez.
Needed a fine Corinthian motor, apparently. I don't...
No, there was. Oh God. Oh, and if you're hoping to really stick it to the man, no, I'm not looking for the XFL to stick it to anybody. If you're keeping tabs on this, more quarterbacks, 3 more signed by the XFL, big names like Josh Johnson, and you're saying, who did Josh Johnson play for? The Redskins in 2018. Of course, he had to touch the flesh with Daniel Snyder. He also played for the lowly Bengals, the lowly Browns, and the lowly Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was 1-7 in 8 career starts, and that's what gets you signed by the XFL. He was drafted in 2008, and it wasn't even to play football. It was to go overseas to the Middle East. That was a military joke. He was drafted. Forget it. Forget it.
For some reason, I was thinking Brad Johnson when you said his name. I was like, he's at a retirement. And he's like 45.
Yeah, well, that would have been a better choice than Josh Johnson. My God.
Yeah, but Josh Campbell or something like that.
Josh was the name of the
Jason Campbell.
Jason Campbell.
Oh, Jason. Okay.
Yeah, Josh was the name of the character Tom Hanks in Big. Josh is not a name that I consider to be a sign of toughness or masculinity.
Other than Josh Rosenstein.
Josh is just average.
Yeah.
Regular guy. Oh, the other quarterback signed by the XFL were Taylor Heineke, Taylor Swift, and a guy who owns a tailor shop in downtown Greentown, Ohio.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Chase Litton was another quarterback. I could come up with Chase jokes too. He spent, you know what his great credentials? 2 seasons on NFL practice squads.
Yep.
Listen to the names of the teams. This is a league that's bound to fail. The St. Louis Battlehawks. What the fuck is that? Do you ever see yourself saying, hey, I remember the Battlehawks?
Only if you're talking about 1980s cartoons.
Yeah, I mean,
one season.
I know. How about the Seattle Dragons? What the fuck? How do they come? What does a dragon have to do with Seattle? I mean, name them after fucking, coffee, It's like
Seattle Starbucks.
The caffeinators.
No, it could be the Seattle Potheads.
Yeah. Didn't they also sign Cardell Jones too? From like,
yeah.
I watched an interview of him on the Pat McAfee show. They're like, "So what made you want to come back to football?" He's like, "Well, I was leaving class because he finished his master's degree in finance." And he's like, "They called me to play football." I was like, "So they signed you from a classroom?" They're really kind of hitting that point where they can't even find quarterbacks who want to play there anymore.
The Seattle Lattes. I mean, what? I mean, name something that at least has something to do. And St. Louis. The St. Louis Ribs. I mean, something.
Maybe Angry Birds were taken. I don't know.
Or the St. Louis Listons. I saw a great documentary on Sonny Liston. St. Louis wanted to get rid of Sonny Liston so bad the cops threw him out of East St. Louis. Bring him back. Wouldn't that be a great logo? That angry, sullen face? That would instantly give you toughness on the field if you played for the St. Louis Listons.
Well, they have the Cardinals. How about the St. Louis Bishops?
Isn't Brian Cox from East St. Louis?
I don't know. East St. Louis
so.
was one of the toughest places on the planet back in the 60s and the 70s. Tough area. It was like, and I'm not making a slang expression, but George Foreman coming from what was called the Coon Walk in Houston. That was the most dangerous neighborhood, and I think where Mike Tyson and Riddick Bowe came from, the part of Bronx, what was it called? Mm-hmm. Brownsville? There's an area that a lot of fighters came from because it's just a rugged area. Previous distributions of quarterbacks with the XFL included Landry Jones. You remember that name. He's with the Dallas Renegades. Cardale Jones, the DC Defenders. Sounds like a fucking comic book. It's a fucking comic book.
Mike Tyson's from Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Brownsville, Brooklyn. Thank you, yeah. And Matt McGloin. My groin. Mark, I want that guy called my groin. Go down on me. He's with, get this, the New York Guardians. It sounds like a second-rate insurance company. If you can't get through to the...
It sounds like those fruity bastards that run around with the red berets.
If you can't get through to the general and save some time, go to the New York Guardians.
Of the galaxy.
My God, it's like...
I am Groot.
Friday's supplemental draft in the XFL will allow each team to push its roster to 70 players in preparation for mini camps next month. A total of 561 players were selected in the draft, but since then, one player, defensive end Corey Vereen, has backed out because of the league's pay scale. A handful of other draft picks have since signed with NFL practice squads. And there will be a major defection, of course, when the league goes broke. All 8 teams will conduct training camp in the Houston area for 3 weeks. The first weekend of games, I know you can't wait, February 8th and 9th, 2020, and boy, he hate me.
Get your fantasy league team set up now.
Now I can finish the program on an uplifting note. Chicago Bears quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, right hip pointer, has practiced without restrictions except talent. That's a big restriction.
That one flaw.
Trubisky was not given an injury designation, but it simply said, is from mentor. I don't know what that's all about. Bears coach Matt Nagy said Friday he was a little bit surprised that Trubisky made such a quick recovery because, shit, we wanted him to stay on there forever. No, because when he's in that much pain at the end of a game like he was last week, you're never really going to know what happens over the next couple of days. But then again, he couldn't have been in more pain than the Bears fans who have to watch him week after week. Added Nagy, I thought he threw the ball well in practice. He always does. It's just when there are other teams on the field that he has difficulties. Wow.
He actually said that?
No.
No.
I said
it's something he would say because he and Pace are having issues, I think.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to play. He does not want to play Trubisky, but I think the GM's making him play him.
I mean, Chase Daniel, another Chase. And that's the name of the strategy. If you're the defensive line, I think we got to chase Daniel. Yeah.
With a lion, no less.
Yeah, Trubisky was 24 of 43 for 190 yards. That's Mitchell Trubisky football. That's Bears football. That's what made George Halas die a second time watching. Besides the hip pointer, Trubisky suffered a dislocated non-throwing shoulder and torn labrum in Week 4. Trubisky missed just one game and returned to the Bears starting lineup, and the fans collectively said, shit. By the way, he's averaging a career-low 5.6 yards per pass attempt, which basically is what Baker Mayfield does in Freddie Kitchens' favorite shovel pass play. The Bears offense enters Week 12 ranked 28th in points scored, 30th in total yards, 30th in passing yards, 29th in rushing yards. He is the 29th ranked passer in the QBR ratings, and he sucks a big moose, which is the name of the Bangor XFL team, the Bangor Mooses. There is no team in Bangor. I made that up.
Trubisky's a proud Lake Mentor product from Cleveland, right?
Yeah. Wow, now we get to pick the game. This is the fun part. And we're going to start with Rick. Rick, what's going to happen on Sunday? We play at 1 o'clock. We got moved. We're earlier.
Yeah. I think we're actually going to win this game. Miami has lost their incentive because I don't know if they're going to tank for Tua anymore under the circumstances. So I see the Browns taking it 28-13.
All right, Jake?
I was going to say 27-17, but Browns do win semi-convincingly. Maybe a late score.
Brian?
This time I'm actually picking the Browns to really come out and punch them in the mouth and keep them down. So I'm going to pick the Browns 31, Dolphins 7.
Yeah. And I don't care whether I'm right or wrong. 34-13 Browns, and just kick them in the groin. And when you're kicking them in the groin, think of Mason Rudolph. Think of Laura. Don't laugh, cry. I know she'd want it that way. Yes, it's a Christopher Cross reference for no apparent reason at the end of the program. But that's what makes me who I am.
Sailing on my alligator.
And we're getting, and Mr. Fergus, there you go, 10 more penalties, 2 fights, and a partridge in a pear tree. All right. And, of course, Brian has already given his 31-7 score. Hey, 34-13. And what I want at the end, I don't want, Fitzpatrick to get hurt or anything like that. But what I want is for everybody in Brown Stadium, because the team's going to be going away to Pittsburgh the following week, is to give Goodell a really good send-off, and let the Browns run roughshod over this team and get to 5-6 with a chance to get to 500 against the Steelers. And I'll be screaming my head off during Steeler week to hurt more Steelers. Because I think what we've learned is we wounded the man. Because when the Browns came in and laid waste to the Rooney family's mediocre football team and laid waste to Mason Rudolph, they ruined the plans of the NFL. They fucked the man. And I want to come and let's hurt more of them. Let's see how good they play when they don't have any of their players because they've been headhunted. I'm all for it. Go for it. The Dolphins, they're just in the way. It's unfortunate, but shit happens. The way I look at it is, hey, it's football. Shit happens. That's everybody else's, belief anyway. Perfnotch says 24-10 Browns. My man D-Bag, wow, you got a great quarterback in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson looks lights out to me. Yeah. 26-16 the Browns over the Dolphins.
And remember how you scoffed at me when I said that kid is the human highlight reel. You scoffed at me. I said, hey, let's go out and draft. We could actually draft the running back from New York and
Barkley.
Barkley and then come back and draft him, and you all scoffed at me and said I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So
Yeah, you know.
all it takes is the right system.
Well, I'll tell you something else. I never questioned the athletic prowess of Lamar Jackson. I never thought that he could throw this accurately. That's the honest truth. I never thought that he could settle down in the pocket and find men open and really have composure. I thought that he was going to take off too early and get hurt as a result of it. And it could still happen. But he has really surprised me how efficient and effective and accurate a thrower that he's been. I think that he's been tremendous this year. So,
And the other thing he's been able to do is avoid the big hit. He never takes a massive shot.
Not
in
yet.
any of his runs.
Yeah.
So,
It's not the massive shot that gets you. It's when you're back in the pocket and somebody rolls over your leg and you pop an Achilles.
Yep.
You know, the thing that my experience with quarterbacks is, you know, there are quarterbacks who get leveled, but then again, there are quarterbacks whose own linemen roll over them. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen at that position. But I guess what I'm saying is, you know, I get really agitated when they say he's the second coming of Michael Vick. He's better than Michael Vick because he's more athletic than Michael Vick and he's far more accurate throwing the football. I can actually see that this guy could have a career, even if he wasn't the big running threat that he is, that he's finding men downfield and he's putting the ball on the numbers. And,
Yes.
And that is really impressive because I didn't think that he would really be able to accomplish it at all, let alone this fast. So,
and Joe Thomas had a really good point on his podcast. He said that it's not going to be a big hit that hurts Lamar. It's going to be those little hits where Lamar loses that maybe quarter or eighth of a step and gets hit a little bit harder in the shoulder and just gets banged around. It won't be a big hit. It'll just be, I feel beat up this week.
yeah, I mean,
One time, maybe next year, maybe 2 years, but it's not going to be this year. He's going to be fine this year.
you can see the toll it's taken on Baker Mayfield getting sacked as much as he's gotten last year. He's not fresh as a daisy by any stretch of the imagination, and these things are cumulative. But and I you know, I don't wish that on any player, but I know that the more temperamental you know, how a sports car is as far as its performance, it will also be in the garage too often. I've seen the Gale Sayers come and go who had these remarkable spin on a dime moves because the knee isn't meant to go in those directions. And what I would say the greatest risk to Lamar is Lamar because he's a freak athletically, and all it takes is one bad cut on a bad field and that knee can go. And it may not even have anything to do with a hit because he's doing these, running down the field and doing these 360 spins and all kinds of things. And if you plant and your cleats go into the field the wrong way and you try that twisting maneuver, your ACL goes, pop goes the weasel, pop, pop. So don't want it to happen, but that would be the biggest risk to him. But really, done a great job this year. At any rate, thanks everybody for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Cheer for the Browns this week. Cheer mightily. And when you're watching the game, do me a favor. Chant, fuck the man. Do that for me. When you're thinking of me, because I'll be doing that. And let the Browns win this weekend and set up a showdown in Pittsburgh. I'm all for it. Until Sunday. Now, I'll see you at halftime and after the game. 1 o'clock start on the Browns game. Don't think it's 4:25. They switched that around. So we could watch the Chiefs and the Raiders at 4:25. Browns are on at 1 o'clock. Don't miss it by making that mistake. Join me at the half and after the game. And I'll have all of those addresses where, you can go right to the links. And I'll show you where they are on social media for the halftime and post-game shows. Thanks to the cast of motley crew that we have here. Rick and Jake and Brian, thank you for bailing my ass out again. And I'll see you all on Sunday. Take care, and until then, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.